welcome to the i5 podcast. I'm Jonathan here with my co-host Jim,
Hello.
and we are responding to what's been a major development in the US election, having to pull out resources from the British election going on. It's just all in the news. Everyone's favorite presidential candidate, Donald Trump. I mean, love him or hate him, he brings views in. He's been found guilty on a number of felonies in his recent trial, and 34 counts to be exact, in his recent criminal trial, making him the first convicted felon to ever run for president if he actually makes it to run for president, assuming they don't lock him up. But apparently,
Well,
even from
sucks to be
being locked
him.
up, he
I
can run.
guess he shouldn't be guilty then. Mm-hmm.
Mm. We'll go into what's going to happen with that, but first the actual backstory. So to be a bit more technical about it, Trump currently expected to run for president in November, current leader of the Republican Party, and the former president of the United States has been found guilty on 34 counts of breaking the law in a criminal trial. What initially instigated the trial? Well, back in 2016, at the end of his election campaign, Trump made 130K, 130,000 payment to his at the time lawyer Michael Cohen to give to Stormy Daniels. It was basically a hush money payment, which Trump marked as a legal expense. The prosecution is saying that the concealing of this payment and falsely claiming it as it was a legal fee broke the election campaign finance laws due to some very minor and obscure technicality. The whole thing is effectively built on a tax violation. The payment was listed as a legal fee to his legal team rather than I don't know how you would mark it, but the IRS weren't happy about it effectively, but it was what it was. It was a hush money payment. And personal opinion on the trial, Jim, and I'll give ours. For me, at least, this was a political hit job, and the way it was carried out really shows that. What did you think, Jim?
I mean, usually in the legal system, when you try to prosecute someone, the bigger they are, the
Mm,
longer the trial takes to schedule and organize. But now
yeah.
somehow this got rushed. And the thing I heard is like the request for the trial to be moved elsewhere because the state in which the trial was held was like 2% acceptance of Trump, which apparently was a low rate. Mind you, I going on the opposite side of the spectrum and having a trial in a state where it's like pro-Trump, that's basically having your jury in your pocket. So again, you don't have justice.
Mm,
But what we see here, I'll be honest, I don't know much about what the money was. So like if it was actual hush money or if it was an
mm.
actual fee, I don't know the details. But
It
let's
was pretty much
assume,
hush money.
okay, well, in that case, yes, we can say that justice is served here. But on the other side of
It,
the spectrum, you have Biden and all the shit he's done along with his family, and we
mm,
saw no justice there. Actually, and this is only one example. We have various examples of justice where hasn't been served. We hadn't had any sort of verdicts, or even let
mm,
alone courts to begin with.
mm,
So it's definitely a hit,
mm.
and it's definitely justifiably unjust, if I can use that term.
Oh yeah,
But I will say though, as far as I'm aware, even if he's in jail, he can still be elected.
yeah, he can. He can
But
still run.
yeah, and what they're doing now is actually a free presidential campaign
Mm,
because it's like how you call it a reverse psychology type of thing, right? If the government tells you don't do that, it
mm,
means they want to control you. Therefore, I will do that because
mm,
if the government tells you no, it means it's bad for them and good for me.
mm. Oh,
So
they.
I'm pretty well. Not everyone thinks like this, but the majority would think like this. I mean, this is
Mm,
pretty much what happened during COVID, where everyone said, you know, stay in the house, don't go out, and people did the exact opposite thing.
mm.
Now, whether this was right or wrong, whole different discussion. I'm just saying how people tend to think
Oh
in the
yeah,
majority.
it's done him a
So
massive favor.
yeah, exactly. So on the back of that, I think this whole trial and prosecution will brand him a bit of a martyr in some people's
Mm.
eyes, which will
Oh, it's yeah.
vastly help in his electoral presidential campaign.
It's reinforced his narrative that that the entire legal system is going after him to stop him from running. Because I'll go into this a bit later, but there are more cases coming up. The Supreme Court has to decide on presidential immunity, and I think there's the appeal. There's the appeal, please, for this one coming up because he will appeal this. And add to that as well, I think there's 3 more criminal cases coming up, including election interference. So this isn't the end of his legal battles, but sticking to this one, just to back up, what we've been saying, that why we think, because it's quite a statement saying that I said I think it was a political hit job, and you yourself have agreed with me on that. Let's back it up with why we think that. So first of all, what you were saying about a state that was very sympathetic to the Democrat cause, that's New York in a nutshell. Not to mention the 12 jurors were from Manhattan. New York is a very democratic state. It's a very democratic. It's a very pro-Democrat state. Add to that, the prosecutor, Alan Bragg, had claimed he had tried to sue Trump hundreds of times in the past, so you've got a personal grudge right there. But also, the way the trial was carried out, now this is really interesting. Basically, this is coming from a CNN legal analyst, Eli Honig, I hope I pronounced that correctly, has basically said it's a political hit. It's basically said it was a political hit in an article that he'd written. And I was really surprised when I saw that it was because I've seen his name before, and I was like, yeah, that's a CNN one. But I was very surprised he wrote this article. And effectively, these are the quotes that I got from the article anyway that I think are worth highlighting. First one is, the judge donated money in plain violation of a rule prohibiting New York judges from making political donations to a pro-Biden anti-Trump political operation. Outside knowledge that judge is in particular a Biden sycophant. Again, Alvin Bragg, what I just said, boasted on the campaign trail in an overwhelmingly Democrat county. It's the fact that I have sued Trump over 100 times. The third, most importantly, the DA's charges against Trump pushed the outer boundaries of the law and due process. The charges against Trump were obscure and nearly entirely unprecedented. In fact, no state prosecutor in New York or Wyoming or anywhere has ever charged federal election laws as a direct or predicate state crime against anyone for anything. None. Ever. Next, the DA inflated misdemeanors past the statute of limitations, and the writer's words, electroshocked them back to life by alleging the falsification of business records was committed with intent to commit another crime. And there's a few more, but you got anything to say on the one so far, Jim? Because even with those ones alone, it's pretty farcical.
Yeah, it's basically finding the loopholes of the loopholes to get as many charges as possible.
The next few, inexcusably, the DA refused to specify what those unlawful means actually were, and the judge declined to force them to reveal this info. I mean, that's crucial right there. Until right before the closing argument, which is just flat out illegal. So much for the constitutional obligation to provide notice to the defendant of the accusations against him in advance of the trial. I mean, that's grounds for a mistrial right there. In these key respects, the charges against Trump aren't just unusual, they're bespoke, seemingly crafted individually for the former president and no one else. Definitely agree with that. The Manhattan DA's employees reportedly have called this the zombie case because of various have more or less called this a zombie case because of various legal infirmities, including its bizarre changing mechanism, but it's better characterized as the Frankenstein case, cobbled together with ill-fitting parts into an ugly, awkward, but more or less functioning contraption that just might ultimately turn on its creator. Oddly enough, and I never thought I'd say this, both the CNN and Fox News legal experts actually agreed. John Woo, a legal expert on Fox News who goes on quite a bit, agreed with most of this, and also went a bit further, saying that the several legal errors made that we've just mentioned are grounds for a mistrial or even reversal, regardless of whether Trump is guilty or not. The case is extremely complicated. It's a misdemeanor about bookkeeping that is transformed into a felony because it was used to cover up or enable another kind of violation or crime that the prosecution didn't really seem to prove, and it didn't even tell Trump until the jury instructions. He's more or less highlighting the same things because the legal system is very defined. There are procedures to follow. If you start going against them, there's not a good way to spin that. For your own credibility, you have to highlight that.
Yeah.
legal experts, aside from John Woo, were saying that alone are grounds for the reversal. I personally don't think this was a smart move by Biden in terms of its effect on the legal system, and I'll say why. Due to the fact that we now have a precedent where extremely weak cases can be brought forward by someone as a local prosecutor, and it can be brought against former presidents. Add to that, it's normalizing the factionalization within the legal system, as this precedent could lead to a potential legal battleground where both Democrat and Republican DAs will go after each other's former presidents. I mean,
Interesting.
and I think Joe Biden wants to be worried about that because, I mean, let's face it, you could do like what, a 4-hour video on his bloody son alone.
I'm pretty sure his son is innocent, right? I mean, he's out of jail, so that means he's innocent. That's
Oh
exactly
yeah,
how it works, doesn't it?
oh yeah. You know what? You know when he was doing those little paintings that he was doing, where he was basically blowing on paint through a straw, and he was selling these paintings for like millions of dollars or something. It was actually said that that was a money laundering operation.
Oh wow, I wouldn't have guessed.
Yeah, who would have thought?
Money laundering on that family. I mean,
Mm,
this family at the moment is like the royal family of America.
mm,
They're governors. There's no way that they would be involved in something like that.
mm.
It's like
But
their behavior must be an example for everyone else to follow.
mm.
So yeah, I wouldn't think they would get involved in something as so low as money laundering, because this is
Oh
like
no.
very, very legal and bad.
I mean, Joe Biden's. I mean, I'm sure we've had this in our past videos. I mean, Joe Biden's went public breaking the law as well when he threatened the Ukrainian government with withholding aid if a Ukrainian prosecutor didn't drop the case against his son. So
No, I
he had
mean
the
that
Ukrainian prosecutor fired.
did he really threaten him though? I mean, I'm pretty sure it goes out of context, and like with the AI editing, no, it's just Chinese whispers at this point. Who remembers that?
I
Just
know. I
threatening
mean,
an official. What was it again?
he threatened the Ukrainian government using his status as vice
Oh,
president to
so not
withhold
not an
aid.
individual person, but the whole government. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
I said, I'm not going to, we're not going to give you the $1 billion. They said, you have no authority. You're not the president. The president said, I said, call him. I said, I'm telling you, you're not getting the $1 billion. I said, you're not getting the $1 billion. I'm going to be leaving here. And I think it was, 6 hours? I said, I'm leaving in 6 hours. If the prosecutor's not fired, you're not getting the money. Well, son of a bitch. Got fired. And they put in place someone who was solid at the time.
And
Who
he
can
just
blame him for
admitted it in
that?
front of journos, and they were just silent listening to him because he doesn't see the wrong in it because he's lost his filter for on that would filter out. Hey, maybe I shouldn't say this because it's illegal.
Well, having a filter
Mm,
requires, well, not requires, but implies that you're actually having a mind.
mm,
But clearly, he's out of his mind,
yeah.
considering that he can barely speak.
Mm.
And thinking about it, was there a debate, or was he about to go to a debate? But I don't think there's been a debate with Biden so far, even though he wanted to do one.
I've not kept up with that enough because I've been a bit preoccupied with the general election. He did have some in his election
Excuse
initially
me.
against Trump the first time, but I don't know if there's been any debates recently. But just going back to the actual factionalization as well, just a couple more points on that. People are already referring to Alvin Bragg as the Democrat prosecutor, not a U.S. prosecutor, the Democrat prosecutor. And you had Michael Cohen basically doing a victory lap on Rachel Maddow's MSNBC show. So this is actually, people are referring to it as a banana republic. I would say it's just more your typical corrupt Western legal system that's, pretty much in control by, pretty much the government's turned against one individual. And, let's be honest, we all knew that Trump would be found guilty. The Democrats are throwing everything they have in the legal system out against him to either lock him up in order to prevent him from running, or just for the fact that they can refer to him as a convicted felon during the US election if he does run. Also, this trial would have stopped Donald Trump campaigning. I mean, obviously, he tried to campaign while going into the trial and things, but it has taken him off the campaign trail because he's had to deal with this. And I think this pretty much shows, a lot of people say this, but I think there's strong grounds to say this kind of does show Trump wasn't supposed to win in 2016, and I think it's scaring the establishment that both Democrats and Republicans are a part of. I'll be very interested, to be honest, to see which Republicans come out and criticize the American justice system. But this is the height of a corrupt Western democracy, where if you will go against that system, how do you define that system? Arms companies, media barons, big pharma, the globalist lobby groups, billionaires who basically fund and bribe the government and have politicians in their back pocket. However you want to establish it, that fund and influence the U.S. population. However you define this, the deep state, the club, whatever the way that you simply label it, everybody in the mainstream went after Trump over the slightest thing. And there were extremely well-funded witch hunts after him, like the Russian scandal, the impeachment based on the Russian inquiry. Or even the January 6th PSYOP, where it was found that the actual rioters were let in and escorted through, basically given a tour of the Capitol building.
These are the pictures you've seen of January 6th. They're familiar because they've been playing on a loop on every media outlet in America for the last 2 years. There's a reason for that. But it turns out there's quite a bit of video you haven't seen. And that video tells a very different story about what happened on January 6th. More than 40,000 hours of surveillance footage from in and around the Capitol have been withheld from the public. And once you see the video, you'll understand why. Taken as a whole, the video record does not support the claim that January 6th was an insurrection. In fact, it demolishes that claim. And that's exactly why the Democratic Party and its allies in the media prevented you from seeing it. By controlling the images you were allowed to view from January 6th, they controlled how the public understood that day. They could lie about what happened, and you would never know the difference.
I mean, there's footage of them being fucking shown around. And it was also said that it was FBI agents in the masks that were encouraging them to go over to the Capitol building in the first place. And whether this is true or not, this guilty verdict is going to reinforce that narrative in the population, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it does. And it goes to show that, if you go against the narrative goes against you. And when that happens, suddenly you're being attacked from all directions and you're guilty of everything.
Oh yeah, it's an absolute threat as well, because you can see from this, any presidential candidate that goes against the grain or steps out of line in any way or form, this could happen to them.
Yeah.
So, lastly, the sentencing. So, people, I was reading in a few newspapers, what seems to be the accepted stance is he's going to get a financial penalty. Now, given the fact that after this guilty verdict, his campaign raised something like $35 million within 24 hours from people just funding, and Bloomberg, the Trump team, were claiming it was as high as 58 million. It has been confirmed at a minimum of 35. I'm not sure about 58, but it wouldn't surprise me. So, assuming that the actual financial penalty is going to be reasonable, it's not going to bother him. But if he gets something ridiculous like what Alex Jones got, where he gets fined $1 billion, and he has to pay that out, I'm not sure he'll be able to crowdfund that or get donations, so that could cut the nuts off of his campaign.
Possible, yeah. Can I make a small intersection here, because we're talking about Biden and the law and stuff? I just see here there is Hunter Biden faces 25 years in prison after buying gun while addicted to crack cocaine. And this is on the official news outlets here in the UK.
I'll believe you guessed that when I see it.
Yeah. Anyways, I will not comment on that, but I just want to share it.
No, it's fine. I believe that you've seen it, don't get me wrong, but I believe he will be arrested when I see him in handcuffs going into prison.
I don't think that he will go that far.
And
maybe after the election is lost.
Oh no. Of course, just the sentencing as well. The other thing that he could get potentially is put in prison. But people are saying that's highly unlikely. But what I will say is I do think that's what Biden's team wants. I do think they want Trump put in prison.
They want to do whatever they can to prevent him from winning the elections.
And like I said, I mean, the set of circumstances you could get from this that you associate with Donald Trump. I mean, it's the entertainment value is just through the roof. I mean, you have Trump who could get put in prison, runs from inside a cell, wins, then walks into the Oval Office, pardons himself, and revels in the fact he is the first convicted felon in history to win the presidency.
Yeah, I mean, how is this like?
It's such a
How
Trump
can
thing
this?
to do.
Yes, it actually is, but not Trump thing, but
And
it's like an American thing to happen, you know?
yeah,
A Trump
and
thing
like
to do, an American thing to happen. And what
the
happens then?
crime was
How this?
and like the crime was paying off a porn star.
Well, yeah,
I mean, if he were to do that, I mean, I might be tempted to vote for him just for the novelty of it.
and then imagine this as a title, and then
Mm.
slightly suddenly cuts off. Electric guitar plays, and you know the uh, infamous line, "America, fuck yeah." I mean,
It's
yes,
begging for it.
it's like it's the timeline we live in. Everything is fucking possible. Like at this point, I read something, and it's so difficult to be fucking surprised because the line between what's a troll, what is fake, and what is real
Mm.
is so fucking thin.
Yeah,
So
and
yeah,
if,
I mean, if that happens, I'm quite curious to see how America will continue with
I know,
having
and
a convicted felon as a prime minister, as a president.
president, yeah, and like it's still not even over. Like he may be dealing with a scenario where he runs from prison and might win. He's still got the Supreme Court decision on immunity, 3 more criminal cases, including one for election fraud, as well as the appeals and the sentencing for this one. So the legal battles aren't even over yet. It's the first of many.
Yeah, realistically, I think the legal battles will take really long period of time to
Mm.
get resolved. So I think they're going to keep postponing stuff until after the election, and then once he elected, then he will get some sort of immunity because he's the president.
Looking at this, that would be the smart thing to do because if you go rushing into the actual court cases now, the court cases are still in the media and they're everywhere with the trial updates, and it's basically doing his campaign for him.
Yeah,
And you've had Biden saying no one is above the law in that speech, and then it's just pictures of his son and Joe Biden himself for all the
yep,
shit they've done.
yep.
Beyond that, I don't really have too much more to say on the subject other than I'm not exactly the biggest fan of Trump, but I'm calling out a spade when I see it. Calling out a spade. This trial was absolutely a farce.
It is a farce, and we're gonna continue seeing shit like this happening throughout the election, both
Mm,
the British one and the American one. But
yep.
yeah,
hmm But beyond that, I don't really have too much more to say on it. Jim, you got anything else you want to add?
no.
Cool. And with that, we hope you guys found it productive. If you agree or disagree, don't hesitate to leave a comment. And don't forget to hit the trinity of the like, share, and subscribe. See you later, guys.
Bye bye.